Yeah, hi students, welcome to EPZ Pachala. My name is Bisaranjan Tripura. I am an assistant professor in the School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. This part of the module on understanding rurality in Indian society is a part of the course on rural development. So today I am going to deal with the characteristic of rural society, the significance of village in Indian rural society, and the overview of rural society. So as I deal with all of this, I will also give you a case on understanding furthermore detail on rural society. So as a fact, to understand much more detail on rural studies, I would bring an understanding on what do we understand caste in Indian society as well as the tribal society. So now let us try to understand about what is a village and rural and rurality. You know, village and village communities has witnessed transition over the ages. So when I said that, there has been a time when every community, those who are in the village, have been practicing a kind of nomadic lifestyle. Mostly their livelihood has been based on zoom cultivation, where they cultivate on the hillside, and they also derive their livelihood through hunting and food gathering. So in due courses of time, as the life became complex, so the people started practicing what they call it as settled agriculture. So with settled agriculture, complex technology came into being, and the life of the village community also started becoming much more complex, you know, than the life that they have been living as a nomadic life. So now here we have to understand, how do we understand village from a scientific point of view. We often pronounce village many times. Here the census of 2011 counts 68.84% of the population in India live in rural areas, while only 31.16% live in urban areas. Now let us understand what is a village. Village basically is a basic unit of a rural society in India. So this concept of village have been referred based on either on geographical or on demographical criteria, and this criteria has been put forward by the census. So census actually defines what is a village. And to understand more about what is a village and what is rural and rurality, let's also understand what is an urban. So now let us try to understand what is an urban for us to understand what is a rural. So the census has a criteria on defining what is an urban. As per the census, it defined for an urban to be on three criteria. The first criteria, what it says is a minimum population of, for an urban to be defined, it has to have a minimum population of 5,000. And the second, at least 75% of the main working population should be engaging on a non-agricultural work. Third, the density of population needs to be at least 400% per square. So then we might have a question now, then what is a ruler? It's a very simple way to understand what is a ruler here. So now what is not urban is actually defined a ruler. Now then that we have understood what is a village, what is an urban, and it is also very important for us to understand the concept on rurality. What is a rurality? The rurality is not much different from what we understand ruler, but the meaning can be denoted to the lifestyle of the rural inhabitants, which is mostly in contrast to the urban lifestyle. Rural feature here is differentiated from either from demographic or from a geographical spaces associated with the set values, cultures, beliefs, which is very different from what we call urban. So therefore, you know, we might see, you know, the beliefs and the values in rural area might be very different from the urban area. As such, where the life in a rural area could be very simple and urban area could be very complex. You know, many Many in the rural area knows each other. They know who are their neighbors next. But in the urban area, the people hardly gets to know each other. And there can also be a meaning on understanding that the density of population in the urban area is very high, where in the rural area the density is very low, and people can travel each other, and people know each other, and they go villages to village, and that's the way that the life seems to be very simple and less complex. Now, if we again get back to the census understanding on what is village. So village is defined in different ways to serve specific purposes and function of a state. And when the state came into being, especially after the independence of India, the first thing that it has done was to define and understand what is a village, is to identify the revenue village. So the revenue village basically became a basic unit to understand the rural society. What is this revenue village? So revenue village is a village that has been surveyed by the government of India. And then what is is there a village, then do we then call a village which is not surveyed? There are also villages which cannot be surveyed, which are under forest land. But these are the villages that had been locally recognized through the forest officers. So census 2011 estimate India having as almost 6,40,867 villages. So I said before about the revenue village. So this revenue village is actually it has many hamlets. So many hamlets could be understood as one village. So these hamlets have been understood as a village for a government, for a better unit of village governance systems. So therefore there is a when we say that nation of villages India, as we basically associate with Gandhi's metaphor of understanding of village in India. Here one more thing, I mean one basic institution in a village is also family and marriage, where which is very different from an urban area. So family is universal and permanent institution since ages, even in the village area, but the kind of family setup that is there in the village is slightly different from an urban area. So the family in the rural area could be of two types. One is on nuclear family, where the husband and wife and the children live together, and it can also be a joint family where many generations live together. So family is a group defined by a sex relationship sufficiently precise and enduring to provide for procreation and upbringing of children. So in a tribal area there are also places where the family seems to be a little in a bigger size, where the share of the family is basically shared, where the resource of the family is basically shared among the family. So there is no much, we can't clearly say that it's completely a nuclear family where only husband and wife only live together. So there are also multiple of joint family even within tribal society. But whereas in the caste society or there can also be a as life became modern, complex, and people have now preferred to live a nuclear life where both husband and wife and children happen to be living a life of themselves. So another important institution in a village is marriage, which unlike in an urban area, so the marriage lifestyle in a village is very simple. Now let me come back to the caste system in India and the tribal society. So to basically understand on the village society in India, so this is a category that we often need to know much more into detail, because the society in Indian village is divided into a caste and non-caste society. So when I say non-caste society, I will bring here the understanding on the tribal society. So the caste society, I will delve onto it more, how do we understand caste society in a village also, which is and also in an urban area. So the origin of caste system in India could be date back to the Rig Veda times. So then this meaning borrow from a word called Varna system in the Rig Veda, where caste system divides people and individual society on the basis of the virtue of birth, and it divides society in endogamous and exogamous group. And it is said that there are more than 2,000 to 3,000 jatis that exist in India. Jati often is to be considered as subcaste or subset of Varna. And there are fourfold on Varna system that is very much prevalent in India. The first is on Brahmin. They are often known as scholars, priests and teachers. And the second one is the Kshatriyas. They call themselves as political leaders and warriors whose duty is to protect internal and external affairs of the territory. And the third one is Vaishyas, who call themselves as merchants who control the activities of economy. Then the fourth one is the Sudras, who engage in menial work and lower rank jobs to offer service to the above category. I have been to many villages in this country, and we cannot deny the fact that the caste system in India, in Indian villages, still does not function. They are still prevailing in many parts of this country. And we also have, below this four grouping, there are also another social groups called Panchamas, often referred as untouchables. So after the independence, the Indian constitution actually has prohibited the practice of untouchability under the Article 70. Then for the eradication of untouchability, the Untouchability Offence Act was passed by Indian government in 1955. So therefore it is very important for us to understand village, to understand caste system in India. And dear students, while listening to my lectures, I request you that if you find time that you go to a field, try understanding about different system of caste in Indian village, whether they are still prevalent or what is the kind of intensity. And probably in some places there might not be so much of caste system that has been practiced way back in 1950s and 60s, but intensity might be very different, but they could be in different form. And it is not a fact that we cannot say there is no caste system even in the urban area. There are also caste systems that are very prevalent in urban area context, but the practice of caste system in urban area could be in a different forms. So the forms could be through not having marriage of the same caste, or could be knowing a person through a surname, or could be through taste, or could be not being able to listen to Ambedkar song, okay, or Ambedkar ringtones, or I'm just giving you an example of different forms of caste system that are practiced in both in villages and in the urban area. So it is for you now to go to a village and know much more into detail on how does the caste system becomes still prevalent in Indian context. Now let me tell you another category which is very much spoken, and you need to understand it much more in detail, is the tribal society. So the tribal society is another category that India consists of as a demographic. So the tribal community constitutes an important part of Indian social structure. They are often referred as Adivasi, also as indigenous people, also as Aborigines. There are different, but the Constitution of India define them as scheduled tribe. What I would call is a politico-administrative term. But who then do we call them as Adivasi or indigenous people? So the concept on indigenous people and category is still defined from an international point of view. United Nations Permanent Forum Indigenous People define and categorize who are in an indigenous people. But in Indian context, we also call the tribes as Adivasi, especially in the context on central part of India. Whereas if you go outside the central part of India in the northeast, there are also people who call themselves as scheduled tribe. There are also people who call themselves as indigenous people. And so there are tribes in every regions of this country, and there are 705 scheduled tribe communities that live in India, who accounts for almost 8.6% of the total population of this country. It was in 1965, Looker Committee report set the criteria for identification of tribes. So while setting this criteria, it has 5 points to understand who are tribes. So the first criteria is they have to be they have to be primitive, and the second point is they need to have a distinctive culture, and the third point is they need to be living in a geographical isolation, and the fourth one is shyness of contact with the community at large, and the fifth one is the general backwardness. But this does not mean that this is the only way that we need to understand who are scheduled tribe in this country. It is Article 342 that defines who are scheduled tribe with an assent of the president of this country. And colonially, both post-colonially, so the understanding on tribes still remains the same, but the way that the life of villages of tribes in India have, there has been some kind of changes. As I said before, that there are quite many of them who have been living a nomadic life kind of style. But now then this tribal community started living in one place, and they have adopted both what we call as Jhum cultivation as well as the settle cultivation. But there are also many places in this country today still where many Adivasis and tribes who still practices Jhum cultivation. They found Jhum cultivation to be one of the best form of cultivation, because they see that Jhum cultivation is something that their life, culture, society, spiritually, religiously, everything is embedded within it. So if you go to a village, you will know in a settled cultivation you might be cultivating one single crop, but in a Jhum cultivation there are many Adivasis who engages it. It is said that there are more than 40 to 50 crops at a time that they can cultivate. So it is often said that it is not required for them to go to a marketplace. So the Jhum itself is a market for them. So the only thing that they need to go is to buy some dry fishes. So to know more about this into detail, so I again request you that you have an exposure on some of the tribal society in India, in any of the region. So to understand more into detail about the tribal society in Indian village, let me further talk about the social and economic characteristic of tribes. So tribes often are pride of having a common territory. When I say a tribe is a territorial community, it means the group has a definite territory in which its members reside. It has a collection of families. Tribe will constitute a collection of families. These families have blood relationship. They can be either matrilineal or patrilineal. They also often associate themselves with a common name. every tribe has its own name. Unlike in a caste society, the tribal society in a village is very proud of having their surname, because the surname doesn't associate themselves with purity or impurity, unlike in a caste society. So the tribe basically like to be known by their common name or by their surname. The tribal society also has a common language. The language differ from the language of other communities, but different tribe to tribe seems to be having a different languages. In India now we have almost more than 6,000 tribal languages in this country. Tribal society also often associate themselves with a common ancestor. Almost all tribes claim a common ancestor. The sense of we feeling and being, feeling of pride always dates back to their stories on their cave, on their, on their ancestors, on their kind of warrior. Then historically, the tribe also have their very unique kind of religious practices. But with the modern time, the religion of tribal society also have got fragmented, and they have learned to practice religion of the others as well. So now we cannot come to a conclusion to say that a tribal society have a religion which is the only one that they practice, that they all practice one. Other forms of social and economic characteristic of tribes are the common culture, community political organization, and we feeling. When I say common culture, and every village in a tribal society have a unique form of a tribal culture, and they also have one unique form of a political organization where the village head looks into the governance systems, and the chieftainship is hereditary. And understanding of all of this about social and economic characteristic of tribe. So each member of a tribe, there is a sense of feeling of pride, and we feeling seems to be very strong, and they retain, that is to retain their and maintain their identity. Okay. Now then that I have helped you to understand how do we understand village, how do we understand rurality, and also I have bring an example on understanding more into detail on rural through caste society and non-caste, which is a tribal society. And I'm sure you might have now then that you will have some kind of introductory understanding on Indian village. To further understand more about tribal society in Indian village, let me also dwell on which are the reason the tribes live in this country, India. So tribes in India are concentrated almost in every parts of India, but majorly they are concentrated in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Odisha, Bihar and Maharashtra. So they are also inhabit in the region in northeast India. The tribal society in this country is divided into two parts. One is either you call it as sixth schedule, which is the parts of northeastern part of India, or you call it the fifth schedule, which is outside northeast, like I said, Bihar, Odisha, Maharashtra, Jharkhand. So all this comes under the fifth schedule. But majority of the tribal seems to be living in the fifth schedule area. So if I were to understand tribal society more in an Indian village, so it could be understood through tribal zones and tribal communities in India, say northeastern zones, central, south zone, and the Andaman and Nicobar Island. And what is the racial groups then? The racial groups of tribes in the tribal community in India is understood either as Mongoloid or Proto-Australoid or Negroids and the Nordic. So to understand much more detail on the tribal society in Indian village, there could be divided into a zone. Could be either on northeastern zone or central zone or south zone or Andaman and Nicobar Island. Unlike the other zones outside northeastern India, the tribal society in northeast zone seems to be slightly different, quite different, but they also follow another category called scheduled tribe. But there are also other few community who could be categorized under scheduled tribe, but they like to call themselves as either they are Naga or Khasi or Garo, which they find themselves to be closely associated with their community. And if you come to a central zone and a south zone, and most of the tribal society often call themselves as Adivasis, or which is an in Indian term you can also call themselves as indigenous people. So indigenous people is often associated with self-identifying themselves who they are. So they have their life, culture, spiritually, religiously, territorially, which is all embedded within themselves. And we cannot also tell the fact that there are no tribes in Andaman and Nicobar Island. There are also tribes in Ladakh. There are many tribes in Rajasthan. And now physically they might be looking very different. Then it's very important for us also to know what is the racial groups of tribes and tribal community in India. So if you go to northeast part of India, they often associate themselves as racially as Mongoloids. Then if you come to the central part of India, they will associate themselves as Proto-Australoid. And if you go to Andaman and Nicobar Island, they would be categorized as Negroid, and or else as Nordic kind of understanding. Now then that I have spoken on what is an Indian village, what is a ruler, what is a rurality, and to understand more about on what is rurality and what is village, we have understood how does the census define. And to understand this more into detail, I also have help you to understand on the caste society and the tribal society, and how caste society is different from a tribal society. So to understand more what is a village in India, it's very important for us to look into this two category. If you fail to see these two category in understanding in an Indian village, so our understanding on Indian village could be still questionable. So therefore, dear students, I would advise you that if you find time, whatever that we have discussed today, that you go to a field and you understand more about these categories, and also compare and see how they are different. Then what is a life and culture, and what is the life of a rurality in a tribal society, and what is the life of a rurality in the caste society. Okay. So thank you so much. Thank you.